We're gonna die. Episode 8.
Welcome back, everyone. Good morning, good evening, good night, wherever you are, whatever you're doing. Thanks for joining us. Things have been very difficult since last you were here with me. Whenever you were last here, it feels like weeks and no time at all. Attitude is destiny, right? Attitude is destiny, and I don't want to say no time at all since I gave up, because this isn't surrender. It just feels like it's surrender. I found it increasingly difficult to believe that things can get better, and everything's just very hard. Like it's been really tough times. So thanks for joining me here today. I barely go outside now. Since I came back to this house, it just hurts out there. It's like the air's wrong. There's a kind of heat to the oxygen. Like I'm in a kind of cranked up sauna. Even when the air on my skin's cool, I can't stay outside. I can't even stay in the back garden. Every time I try, it feels like the world itself is pressing in on me and just suffocating me with an aggressive heat. Inside here, it's not safe. Not at all, but it's familiar. And right now, familiar is pretty much all I have. You can probably tell by the tone of my voice, there's been a lot of acceptance in this. There's been a lot of understanding. I'm no longer sitting here panicked or afraid of this house. That's a lie. I'm terrified of this house. I'm still scared. I'm still so scared, but it's inside. I've talked about how these things hollow you out and fear takes it away. And one of the things, if I think back to one of the things that I said when this started, was I don't want the extraordinary horrible to become my everyday normal. And that's what's happened, and wasn't by my choice. It wasn't something that I decided. It's just the way things are. And yesterday, for example, I watched a bee in the garden from the window, and it was struggling. It landed on a cracked paving slab with a bunch of weeds climbing through. I've not been maintaining anything out there, and time doesn't matter here. I stared at that window, just stared for too long. I watched it stop moving, and I wanted to help, but I also knew that it would hurt. And there was a time when I wouldn't have even thought about that. It's one of the things that I never thought I'd kind of give up on, that unthinking basic decency to act without thinking. But now it's a question. I have to weigh it in my head. And I don't know how long I watched that small, fragile creature with its still wings. But I know I was gripping the side counter by the sink. And when I pulled my hands away, they'd gone numb. They were completely pale, and my wrists hurt. And it took everything in me to mix a little sugar water and force myself outside to give that bee a fighting chance. I talked about this feeling before, like when I was going up Cave Hill, how traveling into the gloom, that feeling of transportation, like you're getting on a flight, and when you exit the plane, the atmosphere is incredibly different and it's disorientating. It's a different temperature, different air. That's what it was like to go outside. And I held my breath and hurried over. I grabbed a stone, just a small pebble really, and put it in the middle of the bowl, rolling it around so that it was soaked through. And I did the same with my finger and put it next to the bee to let it walk on, and then moved it over to this little island that I made. And I put the bowl down on this rusted bistro set and rushed back inside, and just it felt hostile out there now, and it's not wrong. It's not hostile to me because it's wrong. I'm wrong. I feel wrong. I don't belong out there. It's like I'm an infection. It's like it fighting me off because I'm an infection. Out there, I'm wrong. In here, everything is wrong. The presence that I started out feeling it's not even a predator anymore. It doesn't feel predatory. It can't be. It's too vast. It used to be a shark kind of hunting me. It would be behind me. Now it's everywhere. It's a whale, and my thoughts are krill. I can feel it swallowing me up, just sucking me in with its immensity, with its gravity. And I understand my mother's choice. I understand it clear as day. You know, when you adapt to a situation, like I've adapted to this situation, you don't feel fit for anything else. And you're just forced to accept that this is how it must be. And there's no way out. There's no way out at all. Attitude is destiny, as I say. And this is how it is for me now. And it's... I still hurt. It still hurts to talk about this. And he's here now. I don't think it's him, but it doesn't matter. I can smell him, the rank, rotten kind of halitosis smell, and it seeps through every room, you know, with that faintest hint of cologne I recognise. I can hear my stepfather, I can hear John on the stairs, I can hear him outside the doors, whispering hateful things. And I can hear her too. I can hear my mother. And I can hear all the arguments that they ever had, and they're all taking place at the same time, and they're all muffled, they're all distant. If I'm upstairs, they're downstairs. If I'm downstairs, they're upstairs. And I can hear that lamb constantly just suffering in the black. I'm gonna die. I'm locked on that course right now, and I don't see a way out of this. I want to fight it, but I don't know how. I don't know if I can. I don't know if I can. And do you know what bothers me the most? The thing that really scratches away at me? It's not that I can't fight this. It's that I don't know if anyone can fight this. I don't know if there's any way out. I don't know if there's any way to win. I just don't know. And I hate that more than anything else. I recorded that last night, and I was so down, and I'm never up. In fairness, these days, I'm constantly trying to lift my head with some dignity, and it gets harder by the day. I haven't tidied my beard up in forever, and my shirts are unwashed. They reek of old sweat, and even saying that doesn't bring me any embarrassment. I don't feel anything. And I've said that feels intentional, that myself and Chris weren't allowed to do better. We weren't allowed to rise up from the despair or the situation we found ourselves in. And it's almost a punishment, as well as, for want of a better way of saying it, seasoning, like fucking food prep. And I'm not going to allow it. I won't. And my most recent discussion with the admin is a reminder of that. I'm not going to give up. That nobody should give up, even if you've fallen into a bad pattern. There's ways out, and even if the ones you tried don't work, it's like a fucking maze. There's always a way through a labyrinth, even if you have to go through a wall. There's always a way. Always. And I'm not giving up. I'm going to get low. I'm going to talk about it. I'm going to feel like I can't do anything else, but I'm not giving up. And this conversation that I had with admin, she was excited, and she's never overly excited, but goddamn, she had so much she wanted to tell me. And it all starts with the Society for Historical and Cultural Research. I've seen it written cultural and historical research in some of the spam. I've seen it written as historical and cultural. It's made searching for this so difficult. It's so generic. And it's quite interesting because that's where she started out. She agreed that it was all a little bland, and she started searching using both spellings online, even using acronyms like SHCR and SCHR. She found a lot of social media pages with very, very few details. And they're all amateurish local pages from all over the place. And they all discuss links to a wider organization, but on their own, they're completely innocuous. And I've seen them myself. You know, Facebook pages that look like... The best way to describe this is if you've ever seen a Facebook page that was made by an uncle or an auntie for like some local group. It's like they've asked their nephew to make it as a favor. It's that vibe on every single one of these. And there's so many of them, and they're all over the place. It's all artifacted images of bulky neon colored text. And underneath, there's scatterings of posts from the page owners that share local news, you know, in a very upbeat way, and masses of spam and just weird posting. You know, there's no real community there. It's just people posting the word nice on whatever picture is shared, or even on spam links. You know, I like this very much. And there's just a picture of a toaster. It's weird. It's just... This kind of stuff is everywhere. This is like the most normal thing, but it still weirds me out on a deep level. Even talking about it is kind of like the normality of it. Like just kind of, I don't know when this kind of thing became normal. It's so stupid. I don't know when it became normal to have like these conversations between what sound like bots, but you know they're not bots. Very strange, very weird to me. But anyway, there was no Wikipedia for the society. There was no main website that we could find. If spam on the socials, actually, it was reading that. When I mentioned bots there, that's what I'm kind of leading back to. If the spam that made her go back to the original place that we'd heard about the society, the spam posts on the forum. And she wanted to explore that. But first of all, she kind of took the phone number that the Monsignor had passed on to me. And she called it up, and it requested that she leave an email address. So she has a generic email address that she uses for things like this, where she thinks it's going to be spam and wants to check it out. And she did that, and there was nothing for a while, and she went away for a little bit, and she was doing her actual day job. And the email that she got back there was just a very, very generic, same kind of amateurish vibe link that was the same link that has been shared from the spam post on the forum. And before she clicked on that, she wanted to take a deeper look at the spam. And she quickly realized when she was actually looking at all of this in bulk, there's a possibility that this was not spam at all. She checked the posters and noticed that they were all in the same style, but, you know, going deeper than that, every single post came from the same IP address, and the emails were just variations on the username, like they were making new email accounts and trying to post again. And as time went on, they became more urgent, they became more fervent, like someone who was legit trying to help, but just didn't understand the mores of the internet. So the fact that they didn't change their IP address and just went through this laborious process of changing their email said it was likely an individual, and that the user was either too young to understand what they were doing, or somebody older who just had not grasped it. And so she traced these usernames across different platforms: Reddit, old blog sites, obscure forums, articles. Everywhere there were stories about paranormal activity, about strange situations that people were experiencing. You could often find these posts, but They were so bland, so innocuous. Nobody was ever going to click these links because of the way they were written. And this person had translated, they'd used Google Translate. There was a story on a German site about a woman who watched her daughter walk through a door, never to return, just vanished. And a family who went to sleep in a Paris hotel, and then they were found dead in Tokyo. Hauntings, disappearances, creatures, cryptids, weirdness, all of them were kind of touched by what read like spam, but the tragedy of all this is it just felt like they didn't speak the language. And I don't mean the written language. Those German kind of like Google Translate, it's fine. They weren't writing enough for it to kind of fall apart. It's very basic. It's the language of the internet. The styling's wrong, the tone's wrong, and it's all off. So instead of offering help, it's like they're just digitally screaming over and over that they can help, and nobody was listening. Nobody was listening. It's absolutely tragic is what it is to me. It blows my mind, because if Chris had been able to connect with this person, maybe there was something that could have happened. We'll never know. It's nobody's fault. It's just the way things are. Because at this point, I knew whoever this was wanted to help. As admin was telling me the story, I knew it was a certainty to me, because much like you can tell when a spammer is malicious in their patterns, you can read intent from someone who's well-meaning but just can't communicate it. I mean, admin, though, she was a lot more cautious than I am, and she refused to just kind of like delve straight in. She wanted to know more. If she was able to get more information, she would. And so the usernames were all simple, like first name, last name combos, or initial last name or last name initial. Another way it did it was West Coast city surname. Others used years plus firefighting. I'm not going to give any real years here, as I've mentioned, but like, for example, like 61, firefighter 61, or 19, fireman 61, for example. Just somebody giving away all of their personal information without realizing it, which kind of gives a sense of somebody who's a little bit older, somebody in 2012 who's a little bit older would not understand the risks of that. And as admin was piecing this together, she found something. She pulled all this together and she found an obituary. It was for an elderly man who passed away shortly after Chris's post in 2012. And it was along the West Coast. It was a city in the West Coast. The obituary said this was a firefighter who turned fire investigator, who left behind a daughter and grandchildren and is now gone to be with his wife. And so the admin went above and beyond here with this. She decided to reach out to the family, and she's not like me. I'm able to just pile into a social situation and ask a stranger a question. I'm able to be rude and make it sound like it's polite and not feel anything about it. But she'd never said it, but we've talked about it before. And when we discussed how I reached out to her initially and how that was an awkward thing, you know, she said like she didn't know why I would do that. And it's weird that, and it stood out to her that I did. And that's why she was willing to help me. So this took a lot for her, you know, but I was battered down at this time when she was doing this. I was absolutely battered down from my experience on Cave Hill, and I was completely out of commission, unfit for purpose. But out of an interest in seeing this through and caring for my well-being, which I'm eternally grateful for, she dropped the man's daughter a compassionate, polite message, and in a bit of a gambit, she asked if the daughter would be able to answer some questions about her father's work at the society. It took a little while for her to get a response, but it was actually in good time, all things considered. And the response she got was very polite, even kind. I don't need to read the whole mail, and by now you know that I will always try to avoid any information that reveals a person's location or real name. You don't play with that, right? It's not fair to anybody. But the firefighter's daughter thanked the admin for her mail and explained that her father had passed away peacefully. And he was a good man, very troubled by the things that he'd seen in his work as a firefighter, which was a role he'd held until his brother passed away in the mid-80s. And he left the stability of the job there to become a fire investigator. And she remembered that her mother had been very against it at first because it's long days away from the family and potentially less stability. But he found steady work for a non-profit that helped people uncover foul play or, to counter insurance companies when they fail to pay out to people. And the bulk of his work was damage to sites of historical significance, with his main employer being a historical society. There's no surprises for guessing, the Society for Historical and Cultural Research. And, I'm going to accept that that's right, even though the daughter says she thinks that the one mentioned by the admin is right. There's no way in hell that it's not right. It's 100% the same place. So he would travel away for long stretches and he would return exhausted and troubled and be very quiet with his family before resetting and becoming the same loving father and husband that, the daughter knew. And the family would joke pretty constantly that he was a secret agent because he was so secretive about the nature of his trips away. He works for the CIA, 007, and he would laugh it off and they would all kind of joke about it. After his wife passed, and this is fairly typical, I know that this was my grandfather's experience, and it's the case for many people, when their life partner has passed away, their decline can be quite rapid. And he would spend hours just talking to the grandkids about things that didn't really make much sense. Practically lived on the internet. And in his later years, after being put in a home, he would be visited by members of the Historical Society who were nothing but friendly and caring. His care was completely paid up. Everything was nothing was skimped on. It was never luxurious, but he was never left without. His care was completely paid for, as was his funeral. And the family did find it strange about the funeral that despite the bond between those people who visited him, none of his colleagues from the society attended his funeral. Except for people who he knew from his days as a firefighter many, many years before that. And despite his long career, the family could never find any records of his work. There was no documentation, no reports. There was no receipts for his travel. Nothing. Even the little detritus of somebody's life that normally washes up after they've passed away, none of it was there. And all of his assets were drawn up into a single clean lump sum in the bank account. And those old jokes about him working for an alphabet agency resurfaced. But his daughter did think about those visits and how maybe they were removing things and cleaning up her father's life. But regardless, she never thought they were malicious because her father lived a happy, full life and was very well taken care for. And she never had any reason to delve because her father's secrets were his secrets. And she knew in her heart of hearts that none of those secrets were dark or dangerous to her and her family. And admin responded, thanking her for the time and assured her that was all that she needed to know. So now completely satisfied that the links in the firefighter's post were safe, whether or not they work and whether or not the link from the email that the Monsignor sent would work is still another matter. That's still not something that's been looked into. And she's thorough, admin. She's thorough, she's cautious. And no matter how sure she is of safety, she prepared a clean install of a desktop, a completely separate desktop with a really good VPN. And she clicked on the link. And it was nothing. It was another amateur job, this time with a hint of professional polish. There were multiple sections, with a headline that introduced the mission of the Society to develop cutting-edge anthropological research worldwide and connect ordinary people with experts to build greater understanding of humanity's stories, to find patterns which can help us shape the future. Our shared fears, tales, and experiences aren't written in the books. They're shared orally or hidden between the lines. It read very much like a simple, bland group with little funding who somehow got by with a veneer of scientific interest to cover up the paranormal. But, and I have to step away for a moment here because it's almost dawn. And dawn is the time when I have to... Dawn is the time when I have to align my breath. It's the only time I can sleep now. Oh, God. I'm sorry, guys. I have to step away and I have to do this, but when I come back, I promise you, revelations. I promise you, I'll share what we found on that site and that it was worth it. Please take care of yourself and join us again soon.